Alright, so let's talk about spiritual awakening. So you probably clicked on this video because the process has begun to accelerate within you. So maybe you've already had a few kind of breakthrough awakening experiences and you're trying to integrate that, or maybe you are just searching for some sort of deeper meaning in life. So wherever you're at, I'm going to be kind of just giving you general information on what spiritual awakening is, so you can help conceptualize this better in your mind, and you can hopefully go forward better, just with a higher understanding of what it is that you're going through, and you can integrate better. So at its core, what spiritual awakening is it's like consciousness breaking out of its cocoon. And this cocoon that it was in previously was in full identification with the body and the mind, the ego. So all of us, we kind of just find ourselves here in this body. We don't really know why. We just find ourselves here, just spontaneously. And because what we are in control of is our body, and we are perceiving the body's thoughts and whatnot, we come to believe that this is who we are. At our core, we are this body, and we are separate from everything else. That's the key. The key belief is that we are this body, but that we are separate from everything else. And when consciousness breaks out of this cocoon in an awakening, it realizes that it is not the body or the mind. It is just the awareness that is perceiving it. And when you have this realization, it opens you up to a whole new level of love that you didn't previously have access to. And an awakening experience, it goes beyond mere intellectual understanding. Anyone can sort of intellectually understand what awakening is, but it's different to completely feel it within every vibration of your being, that you're one with everything else. Because anyone can kind of think how I'm the universe, I'm part of the universe, but it's different to embody that into awareness, and that's what spiritual awakening at its core is. And with awakening, there's different levels to it. A really just tiny level of, what you can probably not even call an awakening yet, is maybe you're just having a bad day. Maybe you're ruminating constantly, your life's not just going great, and you're just very depressed. And for a brief moment, you detach from that. You are able to observe what's going on in your mind. You're able to observe your thoughts and just allow them to be without identifying with them, without attaching yourself to them. And you just have a brief moment of detachment that gives you a brief moment of peace. That would be a really small level of awakening, probably not even big enough to call it an awakening yet. But a much bigger level of awakening, it might be what Buddhist monks pursue their entire life striving for, which is enlightenment, which is full, complete embodiment of this oneness, of this egoless state. I'm not enlightened, so I can't completely describe it, so I don't know, but that's just kind of what I hear. So there are different levels to it, and you might have multiple awakenings on your journey. So now I'm going to be talking about the stages of awakening, and I kind of just made up these 5 stages in my mind to help you conceptualize it better, what you're going through, and just to help you have a really solid understanding of how far you've come and what you can do to further your progress on this journey. So without further ado, let's get into those stages. And by no means do not take this as absolute truth. This is a very rough outline that I made, and you'll see once I get into it that it's very rough. So let's get into it. So the first stage of awakening is before the awakening even happens at all. It typically starts with a combination of curiosity and suffering, with a key emphasis on the suffering. So typically it starts when you are just not happy, you are depressed. And so maybe you are dissatisfied with your job, you would much rather be doing something more fulfilling. Maybe you feel trapped in a relationship or in a family situation, whatever it is. It can be a number of things. Maybe you're disillusioned by society, you just don't like how people are always exploited for the labor, and the rich just are using people for profit. It could be anything. But this is how it starts. And you start to seek this deeper meaning in life. You start to seek a higher purpose. You know there is something beyond what is presented at the surface level. You know there's something more. You just don't quite know what that more is, but you are interested in finding out what that is. So this leads into stage 2, which is when you begin to search for answers and a higher purpose. And this leads you to ask very existential questions like, who am I? Why am I here? Why this body at this time? Is there a meaning to life? There's got to be some sort of meaning. I just need to find it. There's got to be more. So you ask all these sorts of existential questions in stage 2, and you might be trying to find answers for a long time. There's a bunch of different routes you can go to try to find answers to this, but when you start to find answers is when you get into stage 3, which is when the initial awakening itself happens. And this begins when you start to find answers to those existential questions that you've asked. So you might find a spiritual teacher or an ideology or a philosophy that you really resonate with on a deep level that helps you answer these existential questions and helps you find that deeper sense of meaning and purpose in life. And then maybe you start to take up some of their practices that they recommended, like, meditation. Meditation's great because it helps you detach from your thoughts and just observe them from a more neutral point of view. And another one might be yoga or breath work or contemplative fitness. There's an endless amount of practices that guide one in an awakening. And eventually, through maybe doing this practice or through a breakthrough experience, you really start to feel within yourself that you really aren't this body and this mind, and you start to feel much more connected and at one with everything. And the awakening process it varies from person to person. And so one person, their awakening might be very gradual, so they might do a practice for, a couple years, and then eventually they really feel within their being that they aren't this body or this mind. They feel connected and at one with everything else and are just embodying that higher state of love in their everyday life. But another one might have a more peak experience or a breakthrough experience that gives them this awakening, and that's what happened to me. That happened to me on a psychedelic. I took a series of deep psychedelic trips in late 2019, and I had a full-blown ego death. I had a couple full-blown ego deaths, actually, and I had my entire identity just fall away from me. My ego was completely gone. Who I believed I was this entire life, it was just a story. And I realized it was just this preservational mechanism acting within me to help me maintain my current form. So I latched on to all sorts of concepts and ideas about who I believed I was my entire life, and that became my identity. And then I had that all just fall away from me on this ego death experience, and yet I remained conscious, and I was opened up to a whole new level of being that was beyond mere survival. It's very hard to describe just off the cuff. I have a few videos about it if you want to hear about it, but anyways, let's get back to the topic of awakening. So yeah, it can happen very gradually. Like I said, it can be gradual or it can be a peak experience. But it is very important to emphasize that this awakening, this initial awakening, is only the beginning. It's like 2% of the puzzle here, and you can take this as far or as deep as you want, but this is only the beginning. So this leads us into stage 4, so let's get into that. All right, so stage 4 is what is called dark night of the soul, and you have probably heard this term many times, but essentially what dark night of the soul is the purifying of the psyche from whatever holds it back from fully embodying the awakening. So this process can last several years in many people. It can even be never-ending. I'd say for most people, they're never fully over all of their attachments. But the core of what the dark night of the soul refers to is getting rid of those really big limiting beliefs, those really big attachments and desires that are what holds you back the most. So it's about getting rid of those really big attachments, those really big desires and addictions and limiting beliefs that are holding you back the most. You might always have some little ones, but this is about getting rid of the really big ones. So yeah, so everyone has limiting beliefs, some it can be something as simple as you're told you're a worthless piece of shit when you're a child, when you're 5 years old, and then you go on your entire life thinking that's true, but it's so ingrained into your psyche that it's hard to purge it out. So that can be an example of one Many people have addictions, like addictions to alcohol or to porn or to sex or to a person, like their relationship or whatnot. It can be so many things that hold people back, and it's unique to each individual, which is why the dark night of the soul is often a lonely path, because each person has very unique shit that holds them back. It's not the same for every person. You know, you can certainly find people that have had similar problems to yours and try to get advice from them on what to do, but ultimately, like, the dark night of the soul is very lonely. You will have a lot of depression in the dark night of the soul. You will question whether your awakening was really valid. And also another thing is that as you go through dark night of the soul, you might have even deeper awakenings, and that might make you realize even deeper limiting beliefs and attachments that you've had that are holding you back. So it can be this kind of cycle that happens, and it's really difficult to get through. And I'm not going to go really too much into how to get through that specifically. I might make a separate video on that. This video is more about the core of awakening, but once you've really gotten rid of those really limiting beliefs and whatnot, and all those really core aspects of what's holding you back from fully embodying this awakening, you reach stage 5, which is kind of choosing your next step. And this is where people go a million different directions. It's kind of choosing, you know, what you're going to do next in life. What's your purpose going to be? How you're going to spend the rest of your life with this awakening. And I think a concept that's helped explain this really well is a passage that I read in a book that I read called A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, and he talks about how we have an inner purpose and an outer purpose. And our inner purpose, which is our main purpose, is to awaken, to expand our consciousness, to go through this spiritual work and conscious development so that we can become the purest being of love that we possibly can, so that we can help humanity evolve into the future and progress into the future with higher love. And, you know, once we've done that inner work, what our outer purpose is what you might call a job or a career, and that will naturally reflect the inner work that you've done. So this is why a lot of spiritual people, or people who have been on the spiritual path, they often end up being things like, I don't know, a teacher or a life coach or an artist or a writer. It's something to help awaken others as well, and help others disidentify from their egos and realize their true nature, which is at one with everything in the universe. It's something like that, and it's unique to everyone, but it's usually something to do with that. So yeah, and, you know, like I said, oftentimes when people are progressing on the spiritual path, they have even deeper awakenings. You know, someone might think they're out of the dark night of the soul and they're ready to go forward, but then they have an even deeper awakening. It kind of sends them back to stage 3, and then they have to go through a completely new dark night. So it's kind of this like oscillating, spiraling process. But as you go through it, you progress, you expand your consciousness, and this awakening becomes much more true and much more genuine. But remember, guys, this was just a really rough outline. Obviously, the spiritual path is unique to each individual. These 5 stages that I presented are just a rough outline. They are not meant to be taken seriously and literally like it happens in this exact order. Someone might have an experience just completely randomly that might just suddenly awaken for no reason at all. And that's just how their awakening happens. So yeah, don't take this literally. It's just to help you conceptualize what it is that you're going through, help you realize how far you've come and how you can go about this in the future. So that's really all I got to say for this video, guys. But one more thing I want to tell you guys is that, you know, this spiritual work is the most important thing you could ever do in your entire life. And that is because, like, to me, it seems like it is just inevitable that the next stage of growth and evolution for humanity is to collectively realize this, to start disidentifying from the body and the mind, and start abiding in just a higher consciousness state, in a higher loving state, to start viewing everyone and everything as equal to you. And, you know, the more and more people that awaken, the more people that take it upon themselves to do this work, the more awakened consciousness that we're going to have on this planet. And eventually, I think, if once more and more people become spiritually awake, it's going to be this sort of build-up effect that people are really going to start taking it seriously, and there's going to be a sort of exponential increase that happens with the level of consciousness on the planet. And I'm going to let you do the thinking on what humanity would be like if everyone was awakened, if everyone saw everyone and everything as equal to them. Because I can promise you right now, the state that humanity's at right now is deeply rooted in ego, and the spiritual path gets you out of ego. So one can only imagine what it is like when everyone abides in this loving, viewing everyone and everything as equal consciousness. It'd be a great thing, and I truly believe it in my heart that it is the inevitable, it is the next stage of progression for humanity. So be a part of this awakening process, take it upon yourself to do this work, and you will be rewarded. And I don't just mean you in the sense of your ego, you, the entire universe, will be rewarded by this spiritual work. That's all I got for this video, and without further ado, have a great day and peace, guys.